Someone probably asked you recently. Maybe it was at a family dinner. Maybe it was a well-meaning coworker. Maybe it was the third time this year from the same person who still doesn't believe you. But don't you want kids someday? And you gave your answer. Clearly, calmly, maybe even kindly. And they looked at you like you just said something was wrong with you. Here's what nobody tells you about that moment. The discomfort they felt. The slight pause before they said, "Oh, really?" That reaction isn't about you. It's about them. And it runs much deeper than manners or generational difference. What's actually happening in that exchange is a collision between one of the most deeply embedded psychological assumptions in human culture and a growing reality that science is only just beginning to properly understand. Because here's what the research actually shows. Women who don't want children are not broken. They are not selfish. They are not confused. And they are not, as so many people quietly assume, going to change their minds. They are, in many cases, among the most psychologically self-aware people in any room. And today, we're going to talk about why. Let's start with the assumption everyone makes. The idea that the desire for motherhood is natural, hardwired, universal. That it's simply what women are underneath everything else. This assumption is so old, so deeply baked into culture, religion, medicine, and even language, that for most of human history, women who didn't want children weren't studied. They were diagnosed. In the 19th century, a woman who refused motherhood could be declared hysterical. In the 20th century, she was told she was immature or damaged or in denial. Even today, the clinical term used in some psychological literature is voluntarily childless, as if the most remarkable thing about her choice is that it was voluntary. But here's where the science quietly dismantles everything. In 2017, a large-scale study published in Human Reproduction analyzed data from over 7,000 women across the UK. What they found was this. Child-free women, women who actively chose not to have children, reported significantly higher life satisfaction scores than mothers, and comparable scores to women who wanted children but couldn't have them. Not lower, not tragically resigned, higher. A second study, published in the Journal of Marriage and Family, found that the happiness gap between parents and non-parents is real, and that mothers, particularly, report lower levels of emotional well-being than their child-free counterparts. Now, this is not an argument against motherhood. This is not a competition. What this is evidence that the story we've been telling about women who don't want children, that they'll regret it, that they're missing something, that they'll be lonely and unfulfilled, is not supported by the data. At all. So, if the desire for children isn't universal, where does it come from in the first place? And why do some women simply not have it? This is where psychology gets genuinely fascinating. Researchers have identified something called the maternal motivation system, a cluster of hormonal, neurological, and psychological drives that influence how strongly a woman is drawn toward caregiving and reproduction. And like almost every human trait, it exists on a spectrum. For some women, that pull is overwhelming, biological, urgent. For others, it is simply quiet or absent entirely. And critically, being at one end of that spectrum or the other doesn't make you more or less of a woman. It makes you human, because humans have the widest variation in reproductive motivation of almost any species on Earth. But here's what's really interesting about child-free women specifically. Dr. Amy Blackstone, a sociologist at the University of Maine who has spent over a decade studying child-free adults, found something consistent in her research. Child-free women don't arrive at their decision the way most people assume, through avoidance or fear or a traumatic event. Most of them describe knowing, early and clearly, that motherhood wasn't for them. Not as a rejection of something, but as a quiet internal certainty, like knowing you're left-handed. She called this early articulators, women who never had to talk themselves out of wanting children because the want was never there to begin with. And when psychologists look at the personality profiles of child-free women, a pattern emerges. Higher scores on autonomy, on self-directedness, on what researchers call need for cognition, a genuine love of thinking deeply, of complexity, of ideas. Higher scores on openness to experience, and, consistently, a stronger sense of personal identity that isn't tied to social expectation. These are not personality deficits. These are psychological strengths. Now let's talk about the part nobody wants to talk about: the pressure. Because understanding who these women are is one thing. Understanding what they live through is another. There is a term in psychology called pronatalism. It refers to the cultural belief system reinforced by media, religion, family structures, government policy, and social norms that having children is not just normal, but morally superior. That it is the correct choice, the complete life, the one worth celebrating. And pronatalism doesn't announce itself. It hides inside compliments, inside questions, inside the way baby showers get 3 times the celebration of a woman's promotion. It hides inside the doctor's office, where study after study has documented that women requesting permanent contraception are told, often multiple times, to go home and think about it. That they'll change their minds. That their future husband might want children. That they're too young to know. Women. Being told they don't understand their own bodies, their own lives, their own certainty. Dr. Kristen Park, who has extensively researched the stigmatization of child-free women, found that they routinely face what she calls social identity threat, the experience of being made to feel that their very sense of self is wrong or incomplete simply because of a reproductive choice. And here's the psychological cost of living inside that pressure. It's not that it breaks these women. Most of them are remarkably resilient. It's that it forces them to justify themselves over and over in spaces where no justification should be required. To defend a choice that harms no one. To remain calm in the face of comments that would be considered deeply inappropriate if directed at any other personal decision. Imagine being asked at every family gathering to justify why you don't own a dog. Now imagine that the dog represented your worth as a woman. That's closer to what this actually feels like. Let's talk about the "you'll regret it" myth, because it deserves to be addressed directly. In 2021, a team of researchers from Michigan State University conducted one of the most comprehensive studies on regret and child-free identity ever published. They followed participants over time, across age groups, and asked one direct question: do child-free adults regret their choice? The answer, overwhelmingly, was no. Regret rates among child-free women were not significantly higher than regret rates among mothers. In fact, in some subgroups, they were lower. There is also a phenomenon researchers call decision justification, the psychological tendency to retroactively make peace with any major life decision, regardless of how it was made. Both mothers and child-free women do this. Both groups, over time, tend to feel their choice was right. Which means the certainty a 45-year-old child-free woman feels about her life is no more or less valid than the certainty a 45-year-old mother feels about hers. The difference is that only one of them keeps getting asked to prove it. Here's something the research revealed that genuinely surprised me. Child-free women, on average, invest heavily in what psychologists call generativity. Erik Erikson's concept of the human need to contribute something meaningful beyond yourself. To leave the world better than you found it. The assumption is that children are the primary vehicle for generativity, that legacy flows through offspring. But Erikson himself never said that, and the data backs him up. Studies show that child-free women are statistically more likely to be deeply involved in mentorship, community work, creative contribution, animal care, and relationships with nieces, nephews, and the children in their communities. They don't opt out of nurturing. They redirect it. Dr. Blackstone's research found that many child-free women describe a profound sense of purpose that is wider than the family unit, a sense that their energy, attention, and love belongs to something larger. That's not selfishness. That is one of the most psychologically healthy forms of living a human life. So, what do we do with all of this? If you're a woman watching this who has never wanted children, I want to say something directly to you. Your certainty is not a phase. Your choice is not a wound to be healed. The life you're building is not a consolation prize for something you're missing. You are not missing anything. The science, the psychology, the data, all of it points to the same conclusion. Women who choose not to have children and who are supported in that choice live full, meaningful, deeply satisfying lives. They love fiercely. They contribute enormously, and they know themselves in a way that takes most people decades to achieve. What you deserve, what every woman deserves, is not to be understood by everyone. That's too much to ask of a world still catching up. What you deserve is to be believed. When you speak about your own life, when you make a decision about your own body, when you say clearly and calmly and without footnotes, "This is not what I want," that should be enough. It has always been enough. And if you're watching this because someone in your life made that choice and you're still not sure you understand it, you don't have to understand it. You just have to respect it. Because somewhere between the questions and the "are you sure?" and the well-meaning pressure, there's a person who has thought about this more carefully than you probably realize, who has made peace with a choice in a world that keeps trying to unmake it for them. That takes strength. The kind that doesn't always get celebrated at dinner tables. But it's real. And it deserves your quiet, unconditional respect. If this video made you think differently about something, subscribe and drop a comment below. I genuinely want to know, if you're child-free, when did you know? And how did you learn to stop explaining yourself? Because that journey, that's its own psychology. And that's the next video.